The very first image in the CinemaCon trailer already feels wrong. We are not entering Avengers Doomsday through explosions, portals, or giant action shots. We are entering through silence. A broken wheelchair slowly moves across the remains of the X mansion while ash falls outside shattered windows, and then we see him. Professor Charles Xavier, sitting alone in the dark, staring at an incursion tearing reality apart in the sky. The moment lasted only a few seconds in the trailer, but honestly, I have not stopped thinking about it since. Because Marvel usually opens trailers with power. Here, they opened with fear. That decision changes everything. What makes this scene even more disturbing is the condition of the mansion itself. This is not battle damage from one random attack. The entire school looks abandoned for years, almost like a universe that already lost its war before the movie even begins. And Xavier is not shocked while watching the incursion. He looks tired, like a man who has already seen this ending before. That expression tells us something terrifying. The multiverse collapse in Avengers Doomsday may have started much earlier than we think. Now look carefully at the framing of the scene, because Marvel hit a massive clue there. Xavier is placed directly in the center while the broken walls behind him form almost a circular shape around his chair. It resembles Cerebro, but destroyed. That visual is probably intentional. Cerebro was always the symbol of connection, communication, and unity between minds across the planet. But now, the circle is cracked apart. The message seems obvious once you notice it. Charles can still hear the voices of multiple universes, but he cannot save them anymore. And I think this scene confirms that incursions are no longer isolated events. They are spreading uncontrollably across realities. Remember what we learned in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. An incursion happens when two universes collide and begin destroying each other. But this trailer scene feels different because the sky itself looks fractured before the collision fully starts. That means Xavier may be witnessing the early infection stage of multiversal death. Honestly, that idea scares me more than any villain reveal, because if the boundaries between realities are weakening naturally, then even the Avengers might already be too late. The war in Doomsday may not be about preventing collapse. It may be about surviving the final moments of existence itself. There is another detail people miss during the trailer reaction videos. When Xavier looks upward, the faint sound of children laughing can be heard underneath the music. At first I thought it was random background noise, but after replaying it several times, it sounds deliberate. Those children are probably memories from the X-Mansion school itself. Marvel may be showing us that Xavier is psychically hearing echoes from timelines that no longer exist. Think about how heartbreaking that is. Charles Xavier has always represented hope for the future. His school was proof that mutants and humanity could coexist peacefully someday. But now the trailer places him inside a dead version of that dream. Every broken hallway becomes symbolic. Every empty room feels haunted. And this is why the scene matters so much for Avengers Doomsday. It establishes the emotional cost of the multiverse crisis before the action even begins. Most Marvel films focus on physical destruction first. This movie seems focused on spiritual destruction. Entire histories, friendships, families, and futures are disappearing. Xavier is not just watching worlds collide. He is watching memory itself being erased from existence. And honestly, that makes this one of the darkest openings Marvel has ever attempted. What really convinced me that this scene is secretly about time, not just dimensions, is Xavier's dialogue. He quietly says, "It has begun again." That single word changes the interpretation completely. Again. Why would he say again unless he remembers another collapse? This is where the theory becomes insane. I think the Professor X in Avengers Doomsday is not from the current timeline at all. I believe he survived a previous multiversal extinction event. Maybe not physically, but mentally. Remember, Charles Xavier is one of the few Marvel characters whose consciousness can transcend normal human limitations. If anyone could retain fragments of destroyed timelines inside their mind, it would be him. So what if this incursion is actually part of a repeating cycle, a cosmic reset that has happened multiple times before? The broken mansion becomes even more tragic because Xavier may have rebuilt this dream repeatedly across different universes only to watch it die every single time. And if that theory is true, then Avengers Doomsday is not just another crossover movie. It becomes a story about characters fighting fate itself. They are not battling one villain. They are battling a pattern woven into the structure of reality. And honestly, that is such a terrifyingly beautiful idea for Marvel to explore. Now let us talk about the lighting, because this trailer shot hides another emotional layer. Xavier's face is illuminated by blue light coming from the sky fracture, while the rest of the mansion remains buried in darkness. Blue has always symbolized knowledge and peace around Charles Xavier, but here the same color feels cold, almost lifeless. It is like the incursion itself has become the only source of truth left in existence. Even more interesting, there are no other mutants visible anywhere inside the mansion. No Beast, no Cyclops, no Storm, nobody. That absence feels intentional. Marvel wants us asking the same question Xavier is probably asking himself. Did they die trying to stop this? Or were they erased completely? Personally, I think the answer is worse. I think some mutants survived by escaping into other universes, which means the incursion shattered the X-Men family long before the Avengers entered the story. And that would explain why Xavier looks emotionally defeated rather than physically terrified. He has already lost everyone once. This scene might actually be the emotional foundation for why he eventually reaches out to the Avengers. Not because he believes they can win, but because he refuses to watch another universe vanish without resistance. There is also something incredibly suspicious about the wheelchair itself. Most viewers focused on the sky, but the chair design appears closer to the futuristic yellow hover chair from the comics rather than the grounded versions from earlier X-Men films. That matters because Marvel rarely changes iconic props without narrative purpose. The hover chair represents a more advanced stage of mutant evolution and technology. So if Xavier is using that version here, the movie may be introducing an older and more experienced Professor X than we expected. Maybe decades older. And that connects perfectly with another hidden clue. The mansion walls contain faded scorch marks shaped almost like circular portal burns. They resemble damage caused by sling ring portals or even Dr. Doom's energy signatures from the comics. What if this universe already encountered multiversal travelers years earlier? What if Xavier learned about the coming collapse long before Doctor Strange did? His calm reaction makes sense. He is not discovering the crisis. He has been preparing for it in secret. Honestly, this possibility changes the emotional reading of the trailer. Instead of an old man helplessly watching destruction, we may actually be seeing a survivor waiting for the exact moment when destiny finally catches up to him. The biggest hidden meaning in the scene might involve the mansion itself rather than Xavier. Think about what the X-Mansion always represented across Marvel history. It was not just a school, it was sanctuary, a place where rejected people could become a family. So Marvel intentionally destroying that symbol in the opening minutes says something huge about Avengers Doomsday. This film is probably about the collapse of safe spaces across the multiverse. Every universe believed its heroes could protect reality until suddenly they could not. That idea becomes even more powerful when you compare this scene to Avengers Endgame. Endgame began with Hawkeye losing his family. Doomsday begins with Xavier losing an entire world. The scale of emotional devastation has evolved alongside the scale of the threat. And honestly, I think Marvel wants viewers to feel uncomfortable here. There is no triumphant music during this moment, no heroic reveal, just loneliness. That loneliness may become the core emotional theme of the movie. Heroes scattered across broken timelines, desperately trying to reconnect before existence itself collapses. And if you noticed, Xavier never reaches for Cerebro or any weapon. He simply watches, almost like a historian witnessing the final chapter of a story he already understands. That stillness feels incredibly important. Another clue people ignored appears outside the mansion windows. During one frame, you can briefly see red lightning moving inside the incursion fracture. That is fascinating because red energy in Marvel usually connects to chaos magic, Kang technology, or Doctor Doom, depending on the context. Since Kang Dynasty reportedly evolved into Avengers Doomsday during production changes, this trailer may actually be merging multiple storylines together. My current theory is that Dr. Doom discovered remnants of Kang's failed multiversal experiments and accidentally accelerated the collapse. Xavier may know this already, which is why his expression carries frustration rather than confusion. Imagine realizing that one man's obsession with control doomed infinite realities. That would explain the emotional exhaustion written all over his face. But here is where the theory gets darker. What if the incursion visible above the mansion is not approaching Earth at all? What if it is approaching Xavier specifically? Charles Xavier possesses one of the strongest minds in the multiverse. If reality itself is breaking apart, psychic beings might become anchors connecting dying timelines together. That would make Xavier both witness and target simultaneously. Honestly, the trailer becomes far more horrifying when you consider that possibility. The sky fracture may literally be searching for him. I also cannot stop thinking about the dust floating through the mansion corridors during this sequence. Marvel's visual teams are usually obsessive about atmosphere, and the dust here almost resembles the blip effect from Infinity War. That similarity feels deliberate. The blip represented random erasure. The incursion represents systematic erasure. One was caused by a titan trying to impose balance. The other seems tied to reality itself collapsing under pressure. By visually connecting those ideas, Marvel might be telling us that Avengers Doomsday is the true consequence of everything that began in the Infinity Saga. Every time heroes manipulated time, opened portals, or crossed dimensions, they weakened the walls separating realities. Xavier probably understands this better than anyone, because telepathy itself is connected to invisible networks between minds. In a strange way, Charles Xavier has always existed between worlds psychologically. So if someone could sense reality decaying before others noticed, it would absolutely be him. And honestly, there is something poetic about Marvel choosing Professor X as the first witness to the end. He has spent decades believing coexistence was possible. Now, he must confront a universe where even existence cannot coexist with itself anymore. Then, there is the possibility that this entire opening scene is actually a message rather than a chronological event. Think about it carefully. The trailer never shows another character physically interacting with Xavier during the sequence. What if the Avengers are not arriving after the incursion begins? What if they are seeing a psychic recording sent by Xavier across universes? That would explain the dreamlike editing style around the scene. The camera movements feel unusually slow, almost detached from normal reality. Maybe Charles is broadcasting a warning through the multiverse moments before his universe dies completely. And if that theory is true, the emotional stakes become devastating because it means the X-Mansion scene could already represent a lost world by the time the main story starts. Honestly, that would be such a bold narrative decision. Instead of introducing mutants through excitement and celebration, Marvel introduces them through grief and extinction. It immediately tells audiences that Avengers Doomsday is not playing safe emotionally, but there is another hidden layer here too. If Xavier can transmit psychic echoes between realities, then memory itself may become the only thing surviving the collapse. That means the final battle of the movie may not just involve physical survival. Characters could literally be fighting to preserve the stories and identities of erased universes before they disappear forever. What makes this trailer scene truly genius is how it reframes Professor X himself. For years, Charles Xavier was portrayed as a mentor guiding younger heroes toward a brighter future. But in Avengers Doomsday, he suddenly feels more like the last librarian of a burning civilization. He is carrying knowledge nobody else fully understands. And the sadness in his eyes tells us that knowledge comes with terrible consequences. I think Marvel intentionally chose Xavier for this opening because audiences instinctively trust him. When someone like Tony Stark panics, viewers expect action. When Charles Xavier looks hopeless, viewers feel existential dread. That emotional reaction matters. It immediately signals that this threat operates beyond normal superhero logic. Punching harder will not solve it. Even more chilling, Xavier never attempts to close the incursion psychically. He simply observes it, almost respectfully, like he recognizes it as part of a larger cosmic mechanism. That detail makes me wonder if the multiverse collapse might actually be nature correcting itself after years of interference. If that is true, then every hero in Avengers Doomsday faces an impossible moral dilemma. Do they preserve their individual universes artificially or allow reality to reset naturally? And finally, this is why the Professor X scene may become the emotional heartbeat of the entire movie. It is not really about destruction. It is about witnessing the moment hope begins to disappear and choosing to fight anyway. Xavier sits inside the ruins of his dream while the sky collapses above him, yet he still watches. He still studies the incursion. That means part of him still believes understanding matters, even at the end. And honestly, that is the most Professor X thing imaginable. The hidden meaning of the scene is probably simple but devastating. Knowledge alone cannot save reality anymore. Connection can. The X-Mansion fell because universes stayed isolated too long, fighting separate battles without realizing the multiverse itself was dying underneath them. Avengers. Doomsday may ultimately become a story about broken worlds learning to stand together before nothing remains. That is why this opening matters so much. It establishes the emotional thesis before any hero assembles. Every shattered wall inside the mansion represents a fractured timeline. Every echoing hallway represents lost histories, and Professor X becomes the witness carrying those memories forward into the final war. Honestly, if the movie delivers on the atmosphere promised by this one scene, we may be looking at Marvel's darkest and most emotionally ambitious story ever created. Like, share, subscribe, and drop your theories below. Liam Harrison from MovieCast thanks you for staying with me until the end.